What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Happy Monday. As always on Mondays, hit the thumbs up button. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button and that little bell. Apparently, YouTube isn't doing the notifications anymore. I'm assuming it's because of the GDPR thing, the privacy, blah, blah, blah. So, if you're not getting notifications, I'm trying to figure out the exact reason, but make sure you tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for cryptocurrency, macro analysis, and most importantly, helping you make better decisions to absolutely dominate in your financial and just in life in general, I think. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin, moving the mic around a little bit here. We're going to talk a little bit about, I guess, a kind of short-term trading tactic that works pretty often, but something you can keep your eye on for kind of directional movements. Look a little bit at the market in general. I'll talk about a few bigger picture ideas. I'm keeping these videos a little bit shorter than usual, just because, I think it's just pack it all in, get it going. Now, let's look at Bitcoin real quick. You can see we're back on Bitfinex this week. Last week we did BitMEX, which was always interesting, but I think Bitfinex is probably the best one to be looking at for spot pricing as opposed to futures contracts, which is what BitMEX is. If you don't know what that means, do not worry about it. It's not a big deal. But you can see that we had a little bit of a bull run. Bull run is in quotes. I mean, it's more like a mini bull. Over at the end of May for the last, 4 or 5 days. And then we had a big drop off in the last, call it 24 hours. I'm on the 4-hour chart, and you can see that in Bitfinex, we also have this triangle again. The idea being that, or the hope, I should say, for many investors and traders out there is that this price will move up to the, let's call it like high 8,000s level, and then break out from there into the promised land. We'll continue to move forward. Other more bearish analysis would say that this is going to break down through this trend line, maybe even come back off the top trend line, break down through, find a new floor somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000. We have yet to see. But the bottom line, the thing that really matters is that within this area, it is very unclear that there is going to be a huge move. Okay? Statistically speaking, probability-wise, it is very hard to make a case that the price of Bitcoin right now will move way up or way down in a straight line, because we're not in any particular trend. It's kind of this kind of middle no man's land. And a way to illustrate this, I'm just going to pull up a couple of my favorite indicators, which are the 50, 100, and 200 exponential moving averages. And you can see when they're all kind of bundled like this, I'm looking at the daily chart, when they're all bundled in this way, it's very hard for a very big movement to happen. You really want to see them stacked on top of each other and the space increasing between. That's when you know you're in a bull or in a clear bear run. And we're not seeing that right now. We're seeing it just kind of bunched up, bouncing around. You're seeing it trending towards in the bear direction, but that can change, as we all know, very, very quickly. But it means that there's not a lot that you can do that's going to have a huge, all right, set it and forget it, or we have a very good indicator, which is why there's really not a whole lot of buy and sell opportunities on Bitcoin. Now, if I'm going to go into the 30-minute just to get a little bit of a better view. And one thing I wanted to show you is, so I would say everyone, for the most part, is familiar with what they call the Bart Simpson pattern, where you get these very quick spikes, you get this chop, and then the very quick dumps, and then both to the downside and to the upside. We've been going, for the most part, in the positive direction, and we're starting to see a little bit of a down move. Now, here's one thing you can look at. if you are into this kind of thing. If not, you don't need to be, but I think it is very fascinating in terms of how markets work. Remember, like, there's one idea that I think is always helpful is that you can make money on markets or you can make money on the assets within the markets. And many people, like, they confuse those two. And what I mean by making money off of markets is you can analyze the structure and the behavior of the market and profit from the behavior without even knowing what's being traded, right? There are certain principles, things like moving averages or potentially retracements or support and resistance that it works across all markets, all charts, broadly speaking. And you can make money by trading anything because it follows many fundamentals over a long enough time frame. Versus an asset where you are trying to buy a particular thing that is going to outperform other markets. So maybe it makes sense to trade or invest in crypto or Bitcoin as opposed to investing in Amazon stock because you believe that the asset itself is going to make more money, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So this is a way to look at markets as opposed to assets. So if anyone here has TradingView, you can do this. If you have any charting software, you could do this. But if you look at the Bitcoin futures, right, the CME futures, many of you know about this. Those are contracts that are settled and they're pegged to Bitcoin, but they're settled in cash. So you actually don't own any Bitcoin. And this is what a lot of institutions trade for custodial reasons, for regulatory reasons, for compliance reasons, whatever. But the thing about crypto is it's 24/7. All international, all day, every day. It doesn't stop. But pretty much every other market does have a break period. Even Forex, which is 24 hours a day, Sunday afternoon Pacific to Friday afternoon, it has like 24, 36 hours off. CME futures or any futures market also has this time frame off where it ends on Fridays and then it starts again on Sunday nights, Pacific time. Between that time period, the price of Bitcoin can move. It will move. It almost always moves up or down. And so the futures can stop at a price. And then when they open again on Sunday, they're going to open at the price Bitcoin is trading at right now. And so, for example, this past week, you can see, if you're listening to the podcast, on June 1st at whatever, 1 o'clock, whatever the time frame is, whenever CME futures expire, and this might be UTC, so maybe it's closer to 5 o'clock, it closed at 74.70. Now, yesterday, it opened at, I guess, 77 something, right? 77.50. And if you ever want to see where, you can go to the bars and you can do the high-low close. If you really want to get crazy, you can go to properties, take off that and do the open high-low close, which is where you can see, I guess it doesn't really have that on the bars. But anyway, you can see that it had a very big move. But then you get this thing called the gap, right? You get this big price gap between where it closed and where it opens. And when you scroll back, you can see that this has happened many, many times on Bitcoin. So if you go back to the 20th, you can see that there is a gap between 8,200 and 8,500. That means that on Friday, it closed at 8,200. Over the weekend, it traded up. And so on Sunday, it opened at a higher level. Every single week, there is some sort of gap. You can see one back here on the 22nd. You can see one back here on the 6th. If you go back and you look at all this, there's always gaps. The same thing is true in the equity markets, the Forex markets. Forex not so much, but equities for sure. There's always a gap. The thing about markets and charts is that these gaps will get filled in at some point. It's like almost every single time. The trick is it may not happen immediately. It may take years. But at some point, the gap will get filled in. And so if you look at these futures markets and you scroll back all the way back to the beginning of the futures markets, you will always find that a gap that happened gets filled in at some point. Okay? Now, it may go up a lot before that happens, or it may go down a lot before that happens, but it will get filled in. And yesterday, what you saw is a huge gap. And guess what? We saw this immediate dump that went down, filled in this futures gap. Hopefully that is what needed to happen to settle the price. Like that's what the market needed to do. And hopefully we're going to get a bit more bullish sentiment. So the reason why this is important, not necessarily if you're a trader or not, right? Even if you're just a long-term investor, these are the kind of things where you can look at it and you're like, oh man, what's the news? What's causing this price drop in Bitcoin right now? These are the kind of things you can add this to your list of, hey, I need to go check this out because maybe that's what's driving it, right? So yesterday when we saw the futures market open at 77, I was in a couple of groups and I was like, hey, this is going to go down to high 7400s at some point. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or yesterday or today or in 2 weeks, but it's going to happen. But once that happens, we'll be like all the bets are kind of even now. Like everything's been cleared out, and can be a way to go back to being a bullish sign. But it's a good thing to know. It's a good piece of information. You could potentially trade against it. It's hard to go, it's just, you don't know exactly when it's going to happen, which is why you can't be like, oh, it's 7,700. I'm just going to open a huge short position because it could still go up 5 to 10,000 before it comes back down. Okay. So I thought that may help a bunch of you out there, whether you're an investor or a trader. It's a good thing to know, just understanding how these markets work. Because again, about making good decisions, even though none of this is professional advice, as you know, just entertainment purposes only. Okay, switching over to CoinMarketCap. I've been pretty tame on the altcoins. Last week we talked about Tron, we talked about EOS, we talked about Zcash on a bounce. And I dabbled in those, but it did not, we just didn't get the momentum that I was looking for. Cleared them out, broke even on everything, didn't lose any money, and so it goes. I will say the bucket or the theme that I'm looking at most right now is companies on this list, top, call it 200, that have founders and team members that are very focused on making money, and two, they have a business that uses the token as a way to measure how much money they're making. And the easiest example of this is exchanges, right? You look at all the exchange tokens that are out there. I mean, we got like Binance, KuCoin, Huobi, Buybox. I'm sure there's others out there that I'm missing. Those are the big ones. But if you think about it, those businesses and that token acts as a proxy for how much money they're making. And that is I think that's a very good bet in this market. As the market expands, you want to be invested in companies, assuming, one of your primary goals is to make money. You want to be invested in companies that are exclusively focused on making money, because in the short term, that's probably where the token growth is going to be. Over the long term, if you want like the 1,000x return, 100x return, that's when you get more into fundamentals. That's when you start to look at the vision and how they're going to make a huge change and the big opportunity. And that's any of these coins could have great, huge returns in that sense. But for now, what I'm really looking at is what companies are really focused on making money, and does that money translate to the token, or does it get absorbed into the equity of the company, which is a whole different discussion. And I think that the easiest example is exchanges. I've talked about this before, but I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm probably going to make another one of those portfolios, benchmark it against Bitcoin, and I think it's probably going to hopefully outperform Bitcoin over the next month or two. It may not, but I'm going to try. I'll let you guys know what I figure out. But that's something you guys can really do right now. If you're not investing, if you're not trading, if you're not sure what to do, go look at all these coins through that lens. I think EOS is really interesting. Remember last week we talked about it's got two sides to it. It's got the tech side and the potential and the speed and the everything it's got going for it. And it's also got a lot of haters and FUD, but it also has an enormous war chest of money, and it has people that really want EOS to be at the top. And for it to be at the top, they need the token price to go way up, and they have the money to spend to do that. And lo and behold, mainnet went live. It pumped like crazy. It's kind of coming back a little bit now, but it still has that. So I'd probably roll EOS into that bucket. I think Ripple's kind of in that world too. They have so much money, and they want it to be the premier crypto in many ways. Now, the difference with Ripple is it's a private company, and so a lot of that money can get rolled into the equity of the company. So I think it's a less compelling case, but the logic remains the same. Biz dev is so critical in a lot of this. You can make a case for Bitcoin Cash as well, like Tron, right? Like all of these coins that are really, really, the vision is there, but you get a few beers in these guys, and you find out what the real motivations are. Like, what's really incentivizing them over the long term? Like, would they be okay being number one if they were broke? Probably not. So that's just what I'm thinking about. That's what I'm looking at. Not making any big moves right now. I'm just going to keep an eye on Bitcoin and go from there. Wait for the right opportunity. Two things that I think are interesting that I wanted to chat quickly about. One article, Cointelegraph, our blockchain, quote, can run the whole company, says a MasterCard vice chair at Money 2020. Meaning MasterCard has developed an internal blockchain that may replace what they're currently using, a centralized database for their transactions. The reason why this is interesting, not because MasterCard's going to come out with like MasterCard coin, but because if this actually does make their company more profitable, you can go on the equities market, right? You go on the New York Stock Exchange or whatever stock exchange MasterCard is listed on, and you could buy MasterCard stock because the company, or you believe the company, is going to have better profits, better earnings, better growth. Thus, the stock price will go up. This is the kind of analysis that gets interesting, especially when you want to get out of just owning crypto assets, crypto tokens, things like that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get massive explosive growth or anything like that, or that it's going to get rolled into coin market cap. But these are really, I think the reason why blockchain is considered to be so big is because of that. It's because it can make companies more profitable. And that's where the money really is. Some of them will have a token, which is where you can buy, but others are going to be, you just own the companies as they evolve and as they become better companies. And so some of them will start from blockchain and become the most profitable. Some of them will be existing companies and adopt blockchain. And that's really that's the game. That's the portfolio structuring over the next 2 or 3 years, in my opinion. Similarly, there was on China Central Television, someone mentioned that the country's primary the economic value of blockchain is 10 times more than the internet. Okay. Now I think that this is interesting for a similar reason, where I am starting to think that you are going to see existing companies but start to use blockchains, and the next phase of this whole thing, of this whole gigantic revolution, is going to be companies implementing blockchain and then showing how much money maybe they save. It shows how much more money they can make. It could show how many all this new value that's created in the world. This is when you can start to see the next big bubble forming. I think we still have another year and a half before this really happens. Then you hit the Bitcoin halving, and then it gets really, really interesting in 2020. But I can't stress this enough. The growth of blockchain, the growth of this market, does not mean the market cap on CoinMarketCap is going to go up to 10 trillion. The growth of blockchain means that the value of everything that uses a blockchain is going to go way up. That can be the stock market. It can be maybe the futures market to a certain extent. It can be the crypto market. It can be anything that uses blockchains, not just the blockchain companies or the protocols themselves. And this is something I think a lot of people resist, right? They look at the stock market and they're like, oh, the stock market's a bubble. It's going to crash. We're screwed. The dollar, blah, blah. And I would actually say that blockchain is the most bullish thing for the stock market you could ever have. And so, yeah, there's going to be some consolidation over the next 3 to 5 months, give or take, especially until probably the midterm elections in the United States. And when I say stock market, I'm talking mostly about U.S. equities. But if more companies start using blockchain, start implementing blockchain, that's just as bullish as saying you're bullish on anything on CoinMarketCap. If you are bullish on CoinMarketCap coins, you are bullish on equities that are using blockchains. And so if this does continue, if MasterCard's like one of 100 companies, right, that's going to be doing this, 1,000 companies. But if this does in fact change the way that earnings are, it increases value for companies. Equities could it's crazy to think, but they could double the same way CoinMarketCap could go to 10 trillion. The stock market could double, triple, quadruple, even more than that because of the value of blockchain. And so I think that that's a really interesting idea to think about as it relates to your day-to-day decisions. Most people in crypto look at CoinMarketCap coins. I would encourage you to start looking at publicly traded companies established that are solid, that are implementing or at least trying to implement blockchains in a way that will be profitable or valuable to their ongoing earnings. Because as we know from the 1990s, and I guess from Web 2.0, like in 2003 to 2006, like Web 2.0 phase, I guess 2008, because Facebook was IPO'd in 2006, I think. And when there's new value creation, people don't know how to value it. And typically when they don't know how to value it in the stock market, they put way more money into it, especially when money's cheap, as it is right now. So I know that's it may be a lot of macro for anyone out there, maybe a lot of finance. If you're just like, how do I buy an index fund? All I'm saying is that the blockchain growth is expanding beyond the coins. This is a list of companies that are trying to go blockchain first, revenue second. The New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, Russell 2000, those are all companies that are starting from revenue first, blockchain second. I do not know which one is going to be where the big money is. Probably going to be a combination of both. It's just that crypto is where we can invest in them right now from the ground up. But that's a big thing. It's a really big thing. As you can see, I'm very focused right now on where's the money going, because where the money is, that's what's bringing the talent is, which is the other proxy that we talked about. People watching, where's all the talent going? Talent goes where the money goes, because that's where the growth is. That's how it goes. So, right on. From an actionable standpoint, I'm probably not going to do a whole lot today. I'll probably do some research. Keep an eye on Bitcoin. Keep an eye on some of these other ones. I'm just going to really research a lot. Keep continuing to research which companies are really dialed into the whole revenue game, both in blockchain and outside of blockchain. All right. Remember to hit the thumbs up button. Someone mentioned to me the other day that at the end of the video, they forget to hit the thumbs up. So here's a reminder, thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and have a great day. Enjoy it. Monday. Just love it. All right, guys. It's been real. Peace out.